I think the quickest path to happiness is gratitude. So many people say someday, 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 and before you know it, someday is in the past. Get out there and do it. Whatever you don't know, you will figure out on the road.
Listening to the GHT Overland podcast.
You are awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the GHT Overland podcast. This week, we have a very special guest. We hope you enjoy it as much as we are excited. And now it's time to escape into the GHT Overland podcast. Thanks for joining the crew as we discover new adventures, learning from experienced overland travelers and adventure enthusiasts just like you as they share their campfire stories and insights. And it's not just pure classic overland adventure anymore. Now it is raw epic adventure with variety. The overlanding tribe of people, you are at our core, our people. You all are who we resonate with and feel akin to. However, in this 2.0 version and in our classic style of doing things, we're breaking all the rules, all and every type of ground-based travel, sprinkled with occasional unexpected, maybe sailing adventures, maybe hiking adventures, and honestly, who knows what. Whoever we find that inspires us or folks that you recommend to us that are truly inspiring, we will reach out to them and see if we can get them on the show. This is the grown-up adult version, so do make note, not soaked in explicitives. However, we are no longer removing those passionate raw words that sometimes are just the way we and our guests express exuberance. This episode is brought to you by GHT Overland.
Just letting you know, we're now recording a new YouTube channel of our adventures. We'll let you know when that goes live. From mouth-watering, stomach-pleasuring camp dishes by myself, freaking everything backcountry, boondocking, overlanding adventure takes. Additionally, we'd love your support. At minimum, please take a second to leave a rating on iTunes with anything from one-word review to whatever you're feeling. You hear it on every podcast, so yes, it's that important. Without constant iTunes love, we're just sludge at the bottom of a lost cold coffee cup.
Ooh, gross.
If you're really passionate about the show and like to support us at the next level, Patreon is where it's at. We'd love your support now that we're full-time podcasters and YouTubers. It's our passion to double down on our name. GHT, which is gratitude, humility, and tenacity. Taking it to the next level means we're adding in the rest of our pillars of life. Love is at the core. Purpose is our foundation. No matter the obstacle or challenge, we'll always continue to move forward. It's sharing the stories of others, their trials, tribulations, discoveries, and triumphs. Finding and sharing those stories takes resources, time, and talent. Upping our production value for you is our ultimate goal. Discovering how we can move our production for both this podcast and our upcoming YouTube channel to the highest levels, reaching as many people as possible. To, God willing, find a way to encourage and inspire the world back into positivity, core values, and respect for others. So many of the core elements that have been forgotten or dismissed.
Last time we talked to this guest, it was May 2019.
Lindsey with Girl Gone Glamping returning.
That is right. And if that music was too loud and you turned down the volume, crank it back up. This is a good one. Lindsey gives a lot of really good detail, a lot of really good insight, and more wisdom than I think we could have packed into one individual podcast. As we had mentioned, the episode before this one, episode 103, in our return, Lindsey was one of those people that really helped us get through the last couple of years, and one of maybe 3 people that I would at least read through their post, and I found a lot of inspiration. Everybody finds inspiration in different places for different reasons. We just can't recommend Lindsey enough for someone to follow. She is humble, and she is full of gratitude, and just a really good human being. One of the things that we did not get into this episode for whatever reason, she recently also did an interview with Tiny Home Tours. So if you haven't seen that, be sure and take a look at that on YouTube. She was also part of a docuseries called Traveling Solo. She did mention to us that it is in production and editing. It should be going to like Amazon, Hulu, and Netflix. Hopefully next year you'll be able to watch her there. It's a bunch of women that are traveling solo, so there's probably a lot to learn and be inspired from there. Let's get into the show today. Folks, I am telling you, we are absolutely honored to have Lindsey with Girl Gone Glamping back for a second interview with some really solid information. We really appreciate you taking the time, and welcome back to the podcast. I looked it up. Last episode you were with us was episode 87 and 88, and that was in May of 2019. And
wow, it's been a while.
I know. And you were parked right in front of our business. That was pretty cool. In the Earth Room. That was totally legit. But like since early 2019, a lot's happened.
Oh yes.
What have you been up to? Like what's new? How did you surviving the COVID world?
Yeah, COVID was an interesting time. I think my biggest takeaway from COVID, as far as my lifestyle and overlanding, is that I'm not ready to be stationary yet. So when COVID hit, I was up in British Columbia skiing.
Oh wow.
And I kind of thought like a lot of people thought, oh, it will be, a month or something, and this will all like blow over, in the early stages. So I got a lot of food, water, wine, and stocked up, and I was going to just ride it out in British Columbia. And then the borders closed, and I was like, okay, this is serious. And it was still, February, winter up there. And I was kind of worried if there was a fuel shortage and I didn't have diesel for my furnace. I'm in freezing cold temps. I wasn't sure how like a mandatory travel ban would affect nomads. I had heard in the States that like BLM land was closing and campgrounds were closing. And I wasn't really sure what my next move was, but my best friend, she lives in South Florida in Fort Lauderdale, and her and her boyfriend have a guest house. So she's like, why don't you just come stay with us until this all blows over? So I made one of the longest drives of,
That's a short drive,
right? From British Columbia, traversed all the way kitty corner down to South Florida. And I stayed with them for probably 4 months, which I'm thankful for that time with friends in a crazy state that our country was in. But I was itching to get back on the road and get back out west. Florida's not really a place where I personally can thrive. It's the flattest state in the U.S., if you didn't know that. So that was my biggest takeaway. I'm like, okay, like I'm not ready to put a stop to this lifestyle just yet. So it was kind of like a weird little test in a way. But, about 4 or 5 months after that, I got back on the road and just was kind of learning, state by state, county by county, laws and regulations were very different. I had some issues with my furnace and was trying to find coffee shops to work from in the cold temperatures last winter, and there was like no dine-in in a lot of places I was going. So I was like shivering, working in my camper, waiting for my furnace to get fixed. So, it's been interesting.
And was that in your new rig, or were you still in the Earth Roamer at that time?
I bought this Overland Explorer vehicle in July 2020. Yes, that's right.
Gotcha.
So,
Okay.
yeah, I just hit 2 years in it in this camper, and I just hit 5 years last week overall living on the road.
Nice.
So
Congrats.
thank you. I'm also very fortunate that I had did all of the modifications to this camper pre-COVID. Like, I wasn't having to fight supply chain issues. I wasn't having to fight, lack of labor or anything. So I don't have any current projects going on in the camper, and I'm very thankful for that at the moment.
That's probably good. So when did you get back on the road when you were staying with your friends in Florida?
Let me see, February. I was probably with them from March to August. So like the hottest and most miserable time in Florida.
Perfect. That's a good time to leave, right?
Yeah. Everybody's like, you're leaving now. Like the weather's getting good. And I was like, no, I'm heading out west. It will be it'll be snowing in a couple weeks.
It's funny.
So, yeah.
So during that time, so COVID basically still happening, how has that changed how you do travel today compared to, let's say, 2 years ago?
Great question. I take advantage of my own resources a lot more. So I have a 5-gallon cassette toilet in this camper, and I used to kind of always be like, oh, if I'm at a store or gas station, I'll use their bathroom before I leave or whatnot to consume space in my toilet. Same thing with water and whatnot elsewhere. But I've definitely kind of stuck more to using my own facilities just to not be exposed to as many germs and not spread as many germs. I've never really been like a germaphobe person. Even when I lived in New York City, like I had no qualms holding the subway pole or anything. But the one thing that really stuck with me in COVID was the gas pumps. I was just thinking like there's nobody probably ever cleans these things. You pump gas and then you have your hands on your steering wheel, you're driving down the road, you're probably touching your face or your phone. So I have like a hand sanitizer right in the side of my door frame. Those little things like that, just health wise have stuck with me. And I've just been more mindful meeting strangers, making sure I have a mask, keeping the distance, seeing what they're comfortable with, to just be respectful of everybody's, position amongst all the changing regulations.
Totally makes sense. Yeah. So then from your perspective, for people that are looking to get out, whether it be a trip this coming spring or maybe do some kind of a winter trip and go somewhere where it's warmer, like what would be your advice? What would be your perspective since you're out there? How are things looking? Is it good to start adventuring and doing things? Should people still be staying home? What's up?
I think it's a great time to get out there. The other thing I should mention that I've really noticed, I just turned 37 this past spring, and that means I was 32, 33-ish when I started. Since COVID or post-COVID, whatever you want to call this era that we're in now, I have noticed so many more people in my chapter of life living this lifestyle because so many more people can work remotely. 5 years ago, I was meeting a lot of folks that were retired or some younger kids that were taking like a gap year, but there wasn't a ton of people being able to work remotely. So for me, like amongst my like social networks and potential dating pool, I feel like it's exponentially grown, which is great. I'm meeting people in my chapter of life that are still making an income on the road, which just kind of changes, if you go out to eat and where you go out to eat and things like that. So I'm probably fielding 1 to 2 calls or emails a week from people asking me, how do I get started? What should I do? What kind of vehicle should I get? I think it's a great time to live this lifestyle because of the options of remote jobs. The catch-22 is that it's very hard to find an overlanding vehicle or even a van or anything right now. A lot of shops are 8 months, 9 months, backlogged for a build out or any kind of customization. There's solar and batteries shortages coming from overseas. So that's kind of the catch-22 part. But I think it's made a lot of people kind of adapt and maybe not have to have their rig completely finished to get out on the road, kind of just do it as a work in progress.
Yeah, so maybe that's good. Maybe that'll get more people out and they're not waiting for everything to be done 100% perfect. Mm-hmm. Because as you mentioned, if you order something, it could be 6 months, a year down the road before
absolutely,
before you get it, depending on what it is you're trying to order.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I know the value of a lot of rigs, including mine, has skyrocketed with demand going up. And
that's crazy.
you know, it's enticing to see what people would pay for this. But I'm also like,
I bet.
it's like the housing market. Like I'd have to put all of it back into the next vehicle. And there's very few vehicles out there, I think, that I would, quote unquote, upgrade to. So finally, you know, after 5 years, I've got it fine tuned to what works for me, which is so funny because when I chatted with you guys in 2019, I still owned my Airstream and I was renting the Earth Roamer. And I was really in that beginning phase of like transitioning into thinking I could live in an all-in-one type of unit, and no longer towing a trailer, which that concept seemed like a mountain to climb back then. And now I laugh thinking I towed a trailer around the U.S. for so many years. I adapted, I guess.
That's a really good point. What do you think is better about an all-in-one unit? There's got to be like ups and downs. My concern is, maybe it was yours then at that time, if the vehicle breaks down, you're kind of screwed. Right, because everything's tied together. Yours separate, which are really cool.
Right. Yeah. So I definitely, I mean, people ask me this all the time, the pros and cons. The biggest pro for me, because I didn't have lithium batteries or solar on my Airstream, I was so dependent on campgrounds that it was so much money, and it was like freedom, but with an anchor. You know, I had to book these campgrounds sometimes months in advance. Sometimes you can't cancel and get your money back, or if I want to stay somewhere longer and there's no availability. So again, I had freedom, but a little bit of an anchor attached to it. So with this camper, I have actually never had to plug it in. Like my solar is very robust. I have almost 1,000 watts of solar that charges up 4 100 amp hour lithium batteries. So I can stay at a state park if I want to for the ambiance or whatnot, or if it's a safety issue, but I don't need to. So I feel like I have so much more freedom in this rig. I can get over winter mountain passes with 4-wheel drive, no issues with like towing a trailer in snowy conditions is a nightmare to me. And I don't think that I'm as cramped on space as that was my biggest fear. I was like, how will I fit everything from a 23-foot trailer into this tiny little camper? That's been like the easiest hurdle, I feel like. I just am more mobile. Like I said, I'm able to park in downtown on streets and whatnot. I'm not worried about the trailer. And eventually I'll probably get like a little dirt bike to put either on the front or the back of the camper to give me an extra means of transportation. Now, if I was traveling slower, like 2-3 months at a time in each location, I think the Airstream would have been more ideal because it would just be stationary and I'd have camp all set up, and just have my truck to go about my business. But as much as I'm trying to travel slower, somehow I'm not succeeding at it. I'm just go, go, go.
Well, I would think I would agree with you. I don't know that I would want to tow a trailer in the snow and ice, and you love to ski, so the truck is probably a lot better.
Limiting. Yeah, absolutely. And it's very hard to heat that Airstream.
What truck is it? I think it's a Dodge, right?
So it's on a Ram 3500. It is a 6.4 Hemi. I get a lot of crap about it not being a diesel, but the guy wouldn't sell me. I brought it from one previous owner. He wouldn't sell me the camper without the truck. So I knew the value of these campers. They actually only made 5 of these units, and this was the prototype. And it was,
no kidding.
Yeah, it was like the story, if you want to hear a quick 2-minute story of how I came into buying this camper, is pretty kismet. So after I met with you guys in 2019, I returned the Earth Roamer maybe a month or so after that, and I towed my Airstream back to Buffalo, New York. My parents' farm is where I grew up, and I was like, I'm going to post it for sale. I'm ready. I posted it for sale on my Instagram, and within 2 hours, I had a lady messaging me saying, I want to buy your Airstream. And I was like, okay. I was like, okay, well, let's jump on a call. Let's talk about, whatever. And I was like, this seems too good to be true. She gets back to me like maybe a couple hours later. She's like, I have no problems with the price or anything, but we don't have a truck. And I was like, oh, my truck's for sale too. I was just planning on using it until I bought whatever was next. So I was like, I'm willing to sell both of them together with, a lesser price. She talks to her bank, everything gets cleared. She calls me the next day, and I'm thinking the whole time, like, this is so easy. This is too good to be true. So then she calls me and says, they lived in Philadelphia, probably, I think it's like a 12-hour drive from Buffalo. It was a retired couple who I'm still friends with today, retired teachers. And she was like, I've never towed a trailer before. I'm not comfortable towing it back that far for my first time. Would you be willing to drive it to us? We'll pay for your gas and we'll fly you home. And I was like, yep, absolutely. I'll be there tomorrow.
Done.
So
Awesome.
So I show up in Philly. I, give them, my dad's customized a bike rack for this, like everything I had that was trailer related, just put it in the back of the truck. All of it was theirs. They dropped me off at the Philly airport. Everything's good to go. Went to the bank, transferred the title, and I'm on like an 8-hour delay. So I go to a bar at the airport and I'm drinking some wine and I'm celebrating and I'm like, wow, this was so quick. Like literally it was a matter of days. And I get a call randomly and I'm like, this is Lindsey. And this guy's like, hey, it's Kevin. And I'm like, Kevin who? He's like, Kevin with the Overland Explorer camper. And mind you, like when I was in the Earth Roamer, I was sending out messages on the expedition portal to anybody I could find that had anything that wasn't even for sale, like on build threads. I was like, hey, do you still have that camper? Would you sell it? Like months beforehand. And I had forgotten all about it. And he's like, Kevin with the Overland Explorer vehicle. And I was like, hello. He's like, I still have it. I'll sell it to you. Nice. And I'm like, okay. So we negotiate on price. And I was like, well, where do you
don't have a truck?
Yeah. He wouldn't sell me the camper without the truck. So it was going to be an all-in-one type deal. But I was like, well, where do you live? Because I can't get a flight out of Philly. I'm stuck. I've been at the airport for like 8 hours. He's like, I'm in Salt Lake. And I'm like, let me see if I can like change a flight. And like, I'm thinking the whole time, I'm like, is this really happening? I'm going to buy and sell in the same day. Like it was very, very kismet. Turns out I couldn't get a flight to Salt Lake. I had to fly back to Buffalo and flew out to Salt Lake in the morning. But when my parents picked me up at the airport, they're like, how did it go with the Airstream? I was like, you got to bring me back to the airport tomorrow morning. Going to Utah, bought a camper. And it was just, it all happened so awesome. Fast. I bought it sight unseen. I knew the quality of the manufacturer, the build, Mark, the owner of OEV, comes from a sheet metal fabricating background. And like the nuts and bolts of this camper are as heavy duty as they come. It's just really well made. I'm impressed with all of their campers. So yeah, I showed up in Utah. I got like a 3-day tag to drive it back to New York and started just deciding what I was going to do with it. But it happened so fast. Like I couldn't have wished for it to happen any differently.
It's a win-win on both sides.
Yes, absolutely.
It's funny. So it's a Ram truck. What year is it? I probably missed that. You probably said it.
That's okay. The truck is a 2014. The camper was technically built in 2016. Okay.
And then I think you've got a diesel heater in this one.
I do. I have the S-Bar diesel furnace, and then I have Van Life Tech's whole system in my camper, which it's the domestic heat, and it also gives me unlimited on-demand hot water. So as long as I have water and diesel to fuel my furnace, I have hot water. You can take 10 showers in a row. Whenever you open the faucet, within 3 seconds, the water's hot, which is really nice. I wanted to set this up to mimic a house as much as possible, just to have long-term success in it. And it's little things like, I don't have to get somewhere and then wait 30 minutes for the hot water to kick in to take a shower or do dishes. I don't have to plan as much for that, which is really nice.
That's cool. And then, so where I was going with that is like condensation in the winter has got to be a big problem when you're skiing and stuff. Do you think the diesel heater helps with that?
Absolutely. From everything I've read and from my experience having propane in the Airstream and diesel here, diesel puts out the least amount of moisture into the air, which sometimes I'm regretful of because sometimes I'm at altitude and the air is so dry and my skin is so dry and I'm like wishing that it was a rainforest in here. But it's 100% fiberglass composite camper. So like if I accidentally left the windows open and it rained, it's like a boat. I would just sweep the water out. Nothing's damaged. I mean, as long as the electrical and stuff doesn't get wet. So even if there was a condensation issue, it's super easy to manage, wipe down. I don't have to worry about mold or warping or anything like that, which is, that's nice. Why a lot of those older truck campers depreciate and deteriorate is because, they have plywood or whatnot or subfloors. So this was one of the first of this newer fiberglass technology, I guess you'd call it.
Okay. What would you say you like most about this new setup compared to your experience with the Earth Roamer?
So I don't know if you guys remember the bed area in the Earth Roamer was a little short. I guess I'm 5'10", and if I was sitting on the bed, I kind of have to have my head turned to the side, and I'm a little claustrophobic. So this camper I think you could actually consider it a little over-engineered because it was their prototype of this model. And I'm thankful for that. So I can sit up on my bed and I probably have 4 or 5 inches head clearance above it. I can watch a movie up there. I can hang out up there. I can fold laundry, and I don't get claustrophobic at all. I added a big window to the front, and there is an emergency escape skylight above me. But I mean, I can hang out up there all day, all night, no problem. So that is by far my favorite thing. I may not even be something anybody else notices, but to me, that made all the difference in the world.
Well, I bet when you live in it full time, it's the little things that make the big difference. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then anything you miss about the Earth Roamer?
It's just it's such a cool looking rig, you know, being that the whole body is cool. Molded out of fiberglass, and the wheels are giant. The branding name itself holds a lot of weight in it. So for me, being a female traveling by myself out of that giant truck was a really cool experience. I bet. You know, obviously they come with a hefty price tag if you go to buy it. So I'm very fortunate that I got to experience it without breaking the bank. But even this camper is a little bit of an eye turner as well. I'm getting gas and people are like, what's that thing? You know, their name isn't out there as much yet. They're much more known for their pop-up campers, Overland Explorer. But overall the Earth Roamer is just, you know, that diesel sound and the look of it all. It's just really beefy. It sounds kind of like a high school kid, you know, showing off their car, but it felt cool driving that thing around. I'd be lying if it said it didn't.
I can only imagine. I know that when we pulled up and that thing was parked in front of our store, it was like, that is so freaking cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome. So, Lindsey, you love to ski. Winter's coming up, right around the corner. Like, what are your plans for this winter?
So I've set a personal goal to ski 50 days this year. I normally come in anywhere from like 35 to 45 days, but I normally don't start my season until after New Year's. I'll spend the holidays with friends or family, and then I try to get out west like early January, and, you know, ski season pretty much ends mid-April. So that's not bad working full time to get that many days, but I set a goal to hit 50 days. I'm on the Icon Pass again. And I have a couple European ski trips planned towards the middle of March. I've never skied in Europe, so I'm pretty excited. I'm going to ski in Chamonix and in Matterhorn in Switzerland. So I'll be working while I'm there as well because I keep East Coast hours. So I'll start work around 1 or 2 p.m., which I might push it to like 2 or 3 p.m. And I'll work until 8 or 9 p.m. You really don't go to dinner in Europe until 9 p.m. anyways. And then I'll have all day to ski, which will be great.
Okay. And then do you park like at the resort? How does that work for you?
Last year was a little different with COVID. Like a lot of my go-to spots were no longer available. You know, some places had closed, or because of COVID, they didn't want people like gathering. So last year was a little bit trickier. Plus you had to have reservations at a lot of the resorts. Like Taos, New Mexico is known for, I think they let you camp there for a week at a time. There's a Revelstoke up in British Columbia, my favorite. They let you camp, but that's really easy to camp around there. So it's kind of hit or miss depending on where you're at. I'm a big fan of the iOverlander app. You can look up, you know, BLM land and whatnot, but again, you risk something not being plowed or getting snowed in. So you have to be a little bit more mindful, you know, where you park in the winter for sure. I'm currently outside of Seattle, and I was really hoping to ski Crystal Mountain this weekend, but they just pushed back their opening date, which this would be the earliest I ever skied. So I was really hoping that just to, you know, ski from November all through April would be cool, but not so much. Maybe next week they'll open.
Okay, cool. So switching gears a little bit.
Sure.
In our preparation for being on the road full time, one thing we did is we like canceled all of our home internet, but we keep blowing out the available like hotspot data. What are you what are you doing? What's working for you for cell phone data, internet connectivity with your business that you don't run out of data?
Well, first, congratulations to you guys. I'm really excited to hear that you guys are approaching that, you know, the final step. That's really exciting.
Thank you.
I have Verizon as my cell phone carrier, and I think I have like 30 gigabytes, on my jetpack, and I also have 30 on my cell phone. So I can toggle either one to my laptop.
Oh, so you've got 60, okay.
Yeah. And I don't know if it's like a grandfathered in plan or whatnot, but I don't stream like Netflix or anything like that. I bought a Kindle a couple years ago, and when I'm at like a Starbucks on their Wi-Fi, you can download movies or download things off of Netflix. So when you don't have Wi-Fi, you can watch them. And then my work software is pretty basic. It doesn't eat up that much data. So
Okay.
I'm fortunate in that regards. I know a lot of people that are doing like Zoom calls and stuff. It's like eating through their jetpack. And I think I'm hoping at the end of this year that Starlink is going to be out and about for RVers. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that.
Yeah, I am. I don't know if most of our listeners are, but that sounds pretty freaking cool. It sounds like you need to have it shipped to somebody that lives in a super rural area.
Yes.
And the service is available there, and then you get everything connected at that address, and then you can take off from there.
I believe that's how it goes. I'm not, IT is not my strong suit, but I'm excited for other people to kind of test out, the process of it. Yeah. And then maybe come a year from now, I'll jump on the bandwagon.
Okay, cool. Appreciate the insight there. So staying with like business, you run your own logistics business on the road, and I'm sure you've run across a decent amount of other business owners or people working on the road.
Mm-hmm. I have.
Yeah, cool. So can you give us an idea, and especially for our listeners, any advice for what other businesses people are doing? Or I'm sure you get the question all the time, like, what can I do to make a living on the road? What are some examples that you see that are working for people that our listeners could learn from?
Mm-hmm. Most recently, I've met a lot of recruiters, so people who are like headhunting for other people's jobs, which, they used to have to do a face-to-face in-person interview of their candidates, but now with Zoom, they're able to take those calls anywhere. Lots of sales jobs that, because again, with COVID, no face-to-face sales were happening, cold calls, warm calls, whatever they were, door to door. A lot of it is just cold calling over the phone. I have some friends that are in software sales. I guess what I would tell people is, don't narrow your job search down to, what you think your only skill sets are. Like, be open to looking at new jobs and learning new skills to fit them. If you've been an accountant forever, look, maybe there's some other kind of cross hybrid job just to cast a wider net. Because I think that the freedom of working remotely and living on the road may, counter out you kind of changing your job title and whatnot a little bit. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So instead of like sticking to the same thing, trying something a little different, if it gets you on the road, it might make you happier just because you're able to get out on the road. But I people do ask me this all the time, and I feel very fortunate that I started my company 11 years ago. So having that remote component made getting on the road so easy for me. It's hard for me to speak to the best advice for others to do that. There are a lot of freight brokers that work remotely as well. It's not the right time to get into shipping. I wouldn't recommend it. It's a huge headache. But
so let me ask it a little bit different. If you could start all over and choose any dream gig on the road, what would that look like for you today?
I think it would be cool. I don't know if I could do it remotely, but I would love to work with a manufacturer, like building out, designing overland rigs. I think applying what I've learned in the last 5 years would be so cool to just, add functionality that you can speak to, that you've lived in it, you've tried it, where is there dead space, what works, what doesn't. I don't know if I could do that on the road, but that would be a dream job for a while, I think, for me.
And if you could give your 10-year younger self advice today, what would that be?
Not really to Overland. I would say save more for retirement than you expect. As I get older, I'm always like thinking I want to retire at a younger age. I have the freedom that a lot of people wait to have until they're retired because I am mobile, but having that financial, investing in wealth, I guess, is better than way to put it than saving for retirement. You're never too young to start saving for that.
Oh my gosh, I would agree with that like a gazillion percent. I'm trying to drive that into my boys.
Yeah.
And all they want is cool cars.
Hard to blame them, but I get it.
And like, you do not need at 22 to buy a brand new 20,000 plus car.
Yeah.
Just invest that money, put it somewhere. And I keep telling them, your 20-year older self will thank you.
Yes, absolutely. And
they're like, whatever, Dad.
It's great that you guys are teaching your boys that, because, they're not really saying that in school at all. Like, no, I think my parents mentioned it to me when I was like 30 something, which is late to the game for it. So I'm trying to catch up on that now. I actually just paid off my last loan installment of this camper and everything that I put into it this month. So that should now, I'm trying to apply those methods of, okay, continue to make that payment, but put it somewhere else, invest it. So
yep, 100%.
Keep that snowball going.
Yes. All right, cool. Appreciate that. So since we last talked, what are some places like that you've been, and what are some like fun experiences that you've had? Any cool road stories that you could share with our listeners as you're cruising around the country? Yeah,
so I've gone to a lot more van meetups since I've had this camper. They're welcoming to everybody: van, trailer, camper, tent, motorcycle, anything. But for lack of a better word, the van life meetups. And it's been really, really cool to see the level of community out there. There are young people doing this, there are old people doing this, there are couples doing it, single people, with pets, without pets, like all walks of life. It's really cool. I was at a spontaneous van. We had all just kind of met at a van meetup, and 6 or 7 of us traveled on to Sedona. And there's a ton of BLM land out in Sedona, and a ton of amazing nature hikes and whatnot. And we all kind of camped out there for probably almost 10 days. And everybody was working remotely. Everybody was like mindful of like, okay, she's in her camper taking a call, and somebody was like making cold brew coffee in the morning, and somebody else was making like an appetizer before dinner. It was such a cool experience. That's been one of my favorite things, and to continue to kind of travel with like little caravans from there. It was something I'd never really done before. And as much as I do like my alone time, meeting people who are doing this lifestyle, you just already have so much in common. You already know the struggles, you're immediately, how much water do you have? What's your gray tank situation? You're just talking shop right away and bonding over experiences of, getting the knock on the door or what have you. So that's been a really cool experience. And that whole area around Sedona and Flagstaff was kind of new to me. I'd not been through there before, and it was, like the high desert up in Flagstaff was really cool. I'm excited to head back out that way this spring and try to string together a couple more of these meetups.
Okay, cool. And then on the opposite side of that, what was like a major obstacle that you ran into that was a total pain in the ass that you had to work through, and what did you kind of pull from that?
Well, one thing that was a mechanical issue I had when I bought this camper and truck, I didn't have to do anything to the brakes or the tires. They were in great shape. I think the truck had 19,000 miles on it. And normally every oil change, I would just have them check the PSI, the torque PSI of my lug nuts, because I do have a pretty heavy load on this camper. Even though I've redone the rear axle and added suspension leaves and added some other sway bar, it's adequate. It's not sagging, but it's still a heavy load. So when you're going around turns, there's a lot of pressure on the rear wheels. And I got, I guess, complacent in COVID because I wasn't traveling, so to speak. So I wasn't doing my 10-point or 12-point, whatever, maintenance inspection. And when I got back on the road, I was out in Colorado, and my lug nut had loosened up and my wheel like caved outwards while I was driving down I-70.
Oh no.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm a little over 13,000 pounds. It threw me off the road. I thought I blew a tire. And I was right near Officers Gulch, outside of, can't think of the name of the town, outside of like Copper Mountain. And if you know that area, it's like the one area there's a dead zone on I-70. So I'm trying to call my father, because he's always like my first call of like, and I'm standing outside, it's snowing, he can't hear me, I don't have reception. This cop pulls up behind me, he's like, you can't park here. And I'm like, I only have 3 tires. I was like crying.
It wasn't a choice.
Yeah, my tears were like freezing to my cheeks. And There's another couple that part-time in a van, the Go-Go Gallaghers is their Instagram. Husband and wife, super, super great people. I had just met them that day on the mountain, and I actually called them, and they live up there. They rescued me on the side of the road. They let me sleep in their spare bedroom, gave me a warm meal and coffee in the morning while I had a very expensive wrecker unit come out to tow my camper off I-70, and I had to replace my rear rims. I got new tires, and I'm very fortunate that the damage wasn't more severe. Nothing was wrong with the camper. Nothing was wrong with the actual axle. And it was just a fluke incident. Like, it was so random that happened. And, lug nuts, they don't normally become that loose. So the shop was maybe from being in Florida and hot and humid, and then up to Colorado, dry and high altitude, it just shifted a little. And then the rotation, vibration, you know how that works. But, I have pictures of it, and the whole camper's tipped to the side, and I'm thinking this thing's going to flip over on me. And I wanted to stay in the camper until the tow truck came, and the cop wouldn't let me. He's like, "No, you're not going to go down with the ship. What if you get hit?" Which is the smart choice. But I have a connection to everything I own is in this. It's my baby. So that was crazy, and it was expensive, but I was safe. Nobody else was involved. That was a good takeaway. And then the next morning I woke up at the Go-Go Gallagher's house, and they're like, well, it's a Sunday, the shop's not even going to be open. We should go skiing today. And I was so worrisome, and I was I don't know. And they're like, what are you going to do, sit around and stew over it? And we went out and we had an amazing day on the mountain. It took my mind off of it. So again, that, I had never met these people before, the community of that, and now they're friends, and we've met up numerous times for dinner and to ski after that. So that was pretty cool. I hope someday, if I have a house or whatnot, I can return that favor.
That is super cool. It's nice that you have those connections on the road, and that there are really good people in the world that'll step up and help out.
If I had been climbing a pass or descending a pass and that happened, it could have been terrible. I'm so lucky that it was a flat surface. There was no ravine or anything. So yeah, it scares me even thinking about it, because you're driving these rigs, and they're heavy and they're big, and you kind of have to just be a little bit more mindful about those things. So then I bought a torque wrench, and now I check my torque way too much. I'm constantly checking the lug nuts, but they're holding good.
That's good. So you're going to need to send us a picture of that.
Yes, I will.
That we can post for the show. That is just, I can't even imagine.
I'm not sure if you're aware or how many other people tell you how inspiring you are, specifically your post on Instagram. You have been for us, so thank you so much.
Oh, thank you guys. I'm always so touched when people say that. It's really cool to get to share this experience with others. At some point along the journey, I made a note to document this publicly. It wasn't always planned to do that, and it wasn't the intention of fame or making money off of it. I just wanted a digital diary for myself, and what it's kind of taken a personality of its own. It's been a really cool experience, and I was just talking to somebody about this the other day, hitting the 5-year mark, that I have strangers telling me they're praying for me, or they're wishing me well, or we're here for you, offering me a driveway to park in or whatnot. And it's such a cool thing to be able to be a part of that. And like I said, one day hope to be able to be on the other side of that, giving back to other nomads.
That's cool. Well, I'm glad that people do express that. I don't know a lot. It's kind of hard to stop and read a super long post sometimes, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't know if of course you have a lot more people interacting with you, so you can get a better feel, but I don't know how many people stop and read those. You're one of a couple people that I've always stopped to read that entire thing, because there's always a good lesson in there. So I'm glad that other people are giving you that feedback, and we just wanted to make sure that you're aware how much of an impact you're having to other people.
Wow, thank you so much. That means a lot to me. It really does.
What keeps you motivated to continue overlanding and traveling for 5 years?
I know.
That seems like so long.
It really does. I think I mentioned this back in episode 87 and 88, that it was originally going to be a 1 year lap around the country, and now I'm at 5 years, and I can't see myself stopping anytime soon. Every time that there's a hard day or a mechanical breakdown or, the furnace goes out or whatever, it's temporary and it builds character and you find a way to get through it and you learn something from it. I'm sure at some point I'll probably say enough is enough. I want to take a long shower, hot shower every day or whatever. Who knows what my needs will change. But the kind of the headset that I'm in now for the past almost a year is that I really want to find a partner to share this lifestyle with, whether they have their own vehicle or somehow we make room for two people in my vehicle. Whether they're experienced on the road or new to it, it's really a goal of mine. It's such a cool experience, and to share that with somebody would be really cool. And I'm sure that comes with its own set of problems. But for so many years, in the beginning, I didn't want a partner. I actually had broken up with a guy that I was dating when I bought my Airstream, because I was like, this is my dream. This is for me. There was a lot of like soul searching and growth that I wanted to do. And I wouldn't have been a good girlfriend at that point. I wasn't in a place to dedicate time to that. And it was actually when I had the Earth Roamer, I'd gone to the Grand Canyon, and it's one of those places that it doesn't, it's not underwhelming. Your expectations can be high and it still precedes it. And I took a bunch of pictures and did some hiking, and I got back to the Earth Roamer and I sent all the photos to my mom, and I was like, super excited to share it with her, and it just like hit me like a load of bricks. I was like, wow, this would be so much cooler if I did this with a significant other. And so starting to kind of own that dialogue with myself and with others, and just starting to date with intentions, and not being afraid to say, hey, I am looking for something serious. I hope my lifestyle doesn't scare people away. But at the end of the day, if my lifestyle scares them away, then we probably don't have a lot in common to begin with. So the lifestyle kind of acts like a litmus test for itself, if that makes sense. But I also am not like, I think I would be open to like having kind of a part-time overlanding lifestyle for the right person, kind of having a little bit of roots, but a rig or two to adventure, part-time. I think that would be a good transition at some point.
That reminds me of a really funny story. When Lisa and I first started dating, we made a trip to Colorado for like a week. And that was the thing. In the back of my mind, I was like, if we can make this trip and we don't kill each other, marriage might be something I'll think about.
That's amazing.
Clearly it worked out.
Yeah, yes. It did.
That's funny. So we talked a little bit about finances. Can you dive a little deeper on that? I know that that's a top question for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. Have you figured out like a monthly budget for yourself, or maybe you can break it down to, at least in my mind, what I think of the big five, which is gas, parking, food, I don't know, internet maintenance, like whatever you think works best for people.
Right. It's hard to put, I guess I could put an average to it, but because, some, like this past spring, I was traveling so quickly and fuel is so expensive right now. I felt like I was putting $100 in my gas tank every 2 days. So my budget for that, which I haven't really been too strict on a budget. I've kind of just been like, well, if I got to get somewhere, I have to get somewhere. But I have been better at, buying more groceries and cooking meals versus eating out. But gosh, I really wish I could people ask me this all the time. I can tell you that my insurance and stuff overall for the camper and the truck with Geico is about $1,000 every 6 months. And that's total coverage, like full coverage on both with roadside assistance. Cell phone internet bills average $150 to $200 a month. Gas, I get 9.5 miles to the gallon, and I move very quickly. So gas is a lot a month, I'll say. And then, I still am traveling abroad when I can. So there's the storage factor of storing the truck and everything safely, which is not easy to find, and it's not often cheap. Even like I'm storing my camper in Salt Lake when I fly home for Christmas, and it's like $200 or something crazy for a week. So yeah, they only have a flat rate. They're like, I guess it's like a 30-day rate. They're like, doesn't matter if you're there 1 day or 30 days. So I'm going home for a week. So therefore it's $200 a week for me. And that is the downside. I only have a 3-gallon diesel container for my furnace. If I had a diesel truck, I could plug it in. Actually, Aspire has a gas furnace now that I may be flirting with changing that out at some point, just for the fact that I could leave the furnace running for weeks with a full tank of gas in the truck and not have to worry about somebody topping it off to keep everything warm and protected from freezing.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah. So yeah, that is it's a harder question. I wish I had a better answer for you guys.
Yeah. Well, we challenge you with the tough questions here. So you mentioned personal or vehicle. You go through Geico. Any thoughts on like personal health insurance, either for yourself or what you've heard from other travelers that's working for them?
So just working for myself, I mean, gosh, my health insurance is almost $400 a month for like a bare bones plan that never seems to work when you need it to work. You know, insurance is one of those things you don't value that much when you're younger because you're healthy, and as you get older, you start looking into it. But I normally contact a health insurance, like a broker of some sort, and have them shop around to get me some good deals. I've been with Blue Cross Blue Shield for the last couple of years, but I'm going to shop around again. Actually, it's open season now, so I'll probably start shopping around next week to see what other prices are like. I definitely utilize like urgent cares and stuff like that. And then also, like, instead of having to go to like an ER or anything like that. And then GoodRx is a great coupon app for prescriptions.
Okay, cool. So for personal safety and for like gear and vital documents, any recommendations there for, I know they're completely two separate questions, but like there's this guy that's a filmmaker that just had like all of his stuff stolen out of his Jeep.
Oh,
and
gosh.
I just can't stop thinking, like, what is a better way for a guy that travels full time on the road and has a bunch of really expensive stuff and hard drives you just can't replace? How do you keep that stuff safe?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then I think on the opposite end, somebody like you, a single female on the road, how do you keep your personal safety in mind all the time and make sure that that's, you know, at the very, very top?
Yeah.
So however you want to tackle that question.
Yeah. So as far as like, you know, your passports, extra cash, you know, Social Security card, all the documents, you know, that you have on you these days. I do have like a hidden safe, but it's like if they steal the camper, they get the safe. So that's, you know, a little bit of a catch-22. But I do have that where, like, even if I was going through like a border checkpoint, I don't know if they would necessarily find it. So if you can find somewhere, a subfloor or something like that, that a burglar wouldn't be able to access your camera gear so quickly and easily out of sight, I would definitely recommend that. For personal safety, my door sits like, I think it's 48 inches off the ground or something crazy. It's so high up that if somebody knocks on my door and I open my door, like my foot is in their face. So just that,
That's kind of handy.
I feel so much safer. Even if it's a security guard in the middle of the night, like they can't rush the door. There's only one step. It's like a very big step up. So that definitely makes me feel safer. And then, you know, the bed is even higher than that. When I had the Airstream, I was at ground level and I would be like afraid to look out my window sometimes. I do have a long gun with me just because it's long enough to be legal in all states, but I have to carry it, drive with it unloaded and keep the ammo in a separate case. And I've honestly only had to I've only been in a few situations where I get it out, load it, and put it on the kitchen table and sleep a little bit better knowing that I have it. And it's mostly like out in the middle of nowhere, wildlife and stuff like that I would be worried about. So I would reach for bear spray or eventually I have a girlfriend who just got a cool taser. I would reach for one of those things, I think, quicker than a gun personally. But it is kind of just one of the things where like you get peace of mind and sleep a little bit better with some form of protection, easily accessible. And like anything, like you just have to use your common sense. You know, if you get a bad vibe, keep on driving. If you can't find anywhere to park, you know, go to a hotel or something. It's not, you know, people want to do this on a budget, but it's not worth your safety or anything like that. If staying in an unsafe area, if you just don't have a good feeling about it.
Good advice. Good advice. Lindsey, what restores your faith in humanity as you travel?
You know, I do also with the safety issue, like my baseline that people are good. You know, you pull up to a campground or an overlanding site, and, you know, you can't let your brain think, oh, there's probably like a murderer just hiding behind this tree waiting for me. You know, I don't think people are out to get you. And I think kindness can overcome a lot of frictional situations. And I've seen that firsthand, people showing kindness to me and me showing kindness to them. You know, it doesn't matter if you're broken down or just a stranger passing through town, getting to meet other locals. And, you know, when you meet people in little small towns, they want to showcase their town. They want to tell you where to go eat and whatnot. And you can see the pride in them. And they take an interest in my story, I think more so because I am a female by myself and driving a big truck. And, you know, they get invested in it, and they just want to be a part of it and help you out in some way. And it's extremely restorative of faith in humanity that people are good and that there's good intentions out there.
And if you could put any message on every billboard in America, what would it be?
I think just be kind. I mean, if you're of Christian faith or whatnot, you know, love thy neighbor, be kind to people. You know, it all kind of, to me, the 10 Commandments and everything is just like, be a good person. You know, you don't have to win the argument. You don't have to get revenge. You can be kind. And I think the quickest path to happiness is gratitude, you know, being thankful for what you have. I've kind of struggled with a little bit of anxiety this past year. I think a lot of people have as well with COVID, with my work not being as consistent, and, you know, the state of the world not being sure what's going to be what day to day. And it's really hard to have an anxious feeling if you have a grateful feeling. So, you know, listing what you're happy for, what you're thankful for, even if it's just like the air in your lungs. It's hard to worry about your to-do list and your bills list and everything else if you have that like thankfulness in your heart.
Love it. Gratitude. All right, maybe some questions that you're more familiar with. If you remember from last time, we're going to wrap it up with some fun facts about you. Okay. What's a favorite genre of music that you like?
I love classic rock, like John Cougar Mellencamp, CCR, Billy Joel, Bob Seger, like stuff my parents listen to. I love all that stuff.
That's cool. What's a favorite drink in the morning to get you going?
Oh, I need my coffee. Coffee with cream.
Just cream? Anything else?
Just cream. No, cinnamon. I put cinnamon in my coffee every day.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Perfect. And what's a favorite beverage at night to wind down after a long day?
It's hard to not say red wine. Yeah, it's hard to not. I mean, I'll drink red wine any time of year.
Love it. So what's your best advice to aspiring overlanders and adventure seekers listening to us right now?
I get that question a lot, and I don't think I've wavered from my response where, you know, I tell people just to get out there and do it, not to wait, like we said, till your rig is fully complete or until it's the right time. I mean, obviously you have to make sure your finances and your safety and health and whatnot are all important, but so many people say someday, and before you know it, someday is in the past. So, you know, not letting fear be the decider of that and just taking action. Whatever you don't know, you will figure out on the road.
Great. Lindsey, we so appreciate you. How can people learn more about you and your traveling adventures? Like, what's the best way? Instagram, Facebook? Where do you hang out the most?
Yes. So Instagram, I'm Girl Gone Glamping. I'm in the very, very early stages of starting a YouTube channel. I have just a 2-minute intro video. I have no other videos out there yet. I do have intentions and goals of starting a YouTube channel. I'm learning filming and editing, but my real job is just taking so many more hours out of the work week. So stay tuned on YouTube. It's the same channel, Girl Gone Glamping, awesome. Hopefully with some good content coming down the pipeline.
I'm sure it'll be awesome. Mm-hmm. If anybody's going to follow anybody on Instagram, Lindsey should be your first stop.
You guys are great.
So any more information you'd like to give or useful resources that our listeners should check out before we let you loose?
I mean, again, for if you're actually out there on the road, I'm a big fan of the iOverlander app. There's a coverage app. It's called Coverage for cell phone signal. I try to look that up ahead of time.
Oh, good.
I always recommend to people, if you stay somewhere and you really like it, like pin it on Google Maps, make some notes about it. And then the one thing I will say is be mindful of who you share those pins with. There's some really, really awesome, beautiful places to camp out there in the world. And, we want them to kind of stay sacred. We want people to enjoy it, but responsibly. I've seen some really great BLM campgrounds just get flooded with people, specifically over the last year and a half with COVID, and they're not as beautiful as they once were. So, people do a lot of work to find those places. I'm zooming in on Google Maps for hours sometimes and trying to see, is that a 4x4 road? Can I make it? Do I have high enough clearance? So when you get those, a lot of people have done work and effort to find those places. So pin them, but be mindful who you share them with your geotagging.
Makes sense to me. All right, cool.
Perfect. Well, I'm glad I got to catch up with you guys, and I'm really, really excited to see, where you guys go. It's exciting.
It'll be fun. And I'll work on the mic so Lisa can be part of the conversation.
Yes.
She's back there very sad. So that we can get her in there as well. That's cool. Thank you, Lindsey.
Awesome. Have a good night, guys.
Yeah, you too. Take care.